In my past few years, I have experienced the joy of my brother's birth, the utter sorrow of my mother's death, the pain of my body being defiled by my stepfather, the horrors of the heavens, and unexpected kindness from hell. I took what was left of my tiny, shattered family and built my own, surrounding myself with warmth and love. In the past month, I have learned my beloved brother is doomed to die to protect me. I lost my closest friend, and my infant son prefers death and the devil himself over me. All this, and I'm not even old enough to drown my sorrows in booze. I am Moira, mother of ruin, and I am done being the mortal girl, protected and coddled by those with power. I have had enough. I had listened carefully to Gabe, Red, Jackson, Neil, Luke, and James carefully plan their assault on Cronus. They never took into consideration what would happen if they succeeded. Can you kill time? What would happen if they achieved their goal? How would the other gods react to the death of one of their own? I had too many questions and not enough answers. Rory played with Nixie in the moonpool room as I slunk through the museum. The room of forbidden words called out to me, promising the answers to my riddles. I flipped through pages and pages of the hidden library's tomes. Carefully, I drew out my own plan, reckless though it may be. I kissed my sleeping son goodbye and commanded my horde of elves to protect my Rory. It took much persuading to get them to stay rather than accompany me. From Rory, I took the four-leaf clover pendant. From the armory, I took Miramasa. From James, I took the marble pot of rune ink I had used on the floor to trap the watcher of sleep paralysis. The cruel being had called to me as I passed him, begging and then threatening me to release him. The boogies delighted in his agony. He twitched and writhed on the floor, a side effect of his addiction. He would be stuck in my star until he was reformed.
Moira, what are you up to?
A boogie called to me. I could only see his glowing eyes in the dark of his doorway. When I refused to answer, he followed me, calling out from the shadows beneath tables or behind doors.
Moira.
Still, I ignored him. Nothing in the enchanted armor room was small enough for me. I cursed my slight frame.
Moira.
His sing-song voice called from a dark corner. What?
May I be of assistance?
His voice was like gravel on gravel as he whispered in my head. How?
Are you not preparing for battle?
Nightmares crawled in the timber of his words. I am, and I'd prefer it if you kept that to yourself. His chuckle echoed and drew shivers up my spine.
Of course, Mother of Ruin, Queen of the Elves. I would never dare to betray you. Instead, ask of us anything. If it is in our power, it shall be.
I neither want or need anything from you.
Perhaps a ride? Or something lost, found?
A ride? How the... Can you find Charlie?
He is gone from this earth, little one. Our doors open anywhere there be shadows.
I contemplated their words. I knew in my heart of hearts I would never see Charlie again. Not even death knew what she had done, only that she could feel him no more. The trapped watcher only verified my fears. Charlie, protector of my brother and dearest friend, was gone. Or he was at least out of reach and in a place with no shadows. Either way, he no longer responded to Rory's summons. Your doors open anywhere?
As long as there is darkness, we are there.
Find me a tattoo parlor where they won't ask questions and I won't die of some disease. Again, the shadowy monsters laughed in my head. When my mother's death had been ruled a murder, the insurance company had resubmitted their paperwork, paying me a cool $250,000 for her death. The police department had given me more to keep me quiet. John had used police funds to track me down before attempting to murder me as well. I knew I'd have plenty of money. I'd just have to make a withdrawal at a bank to ensure Luke and the boys couldn't hunt me down by my debit card. I stood before the utility closet and slowly opened it. The small space was dark and smelled of cleaning solutions. Within mere seconds, the atmosphere of the closet changed. The air was warm and moist, smelling of must and sulfur.
Are you ready?
I hitched Miramasa over my shoulder and adjusted the clover over my breast. Yes. Stepping into the closet, a dry hand grabbed my wrist and pulled me back out into the light.
Moira,
James's eyes were sad.
Take this. Miramasa and whatever else you may need on your journey will fit.
He thrust a leather messenger bag into my hands.
It is the unplumbed satchel. All will fit inside.
He released me and patted my arm.
Be well, Moira.
With that, I was off. The darkness that surrounded me was different from Charlie's. Where his would make my stomach do flips, the boogies gave me butterflies and the shivers. I could hear the soft crying of children, the creaking of doors, shrieks of terror, and the quickening of heartbeats. The boogie gently held my hand and led me through the blinding pitch. When I need to go somewhere else,
just call us.
What should I call you?
We have many names.
An old Bible story flashed through my head, and I released a nervous giggle. For you are Legion? The laughter of many voices filled my head with mirth. The shadows around me changed. I could almost imagine the withered gray skin around their eyes crinkling with their terrifying chuckles.
She's a clever one. I like this one.
We chose wisely.
You may call us Legion.
We have arrived, little one. I was thrust from a closet and found myself in the hallway of a bank. A woman to my left gave a small squeal. Goodness, girl, you gave me a start. I didn't see you there. I smiled at her and joined the queue in the lobby. After withdrawing a nice chunk of cash, I had a moment of panic. I couldn't just walk back into the bank's closet. It was too bright outside to disappear into an alley.
The bathroom, my lady.
A small voice hissed from my bag. I quickly opened it to find an elf peering back at me. He wore a tin can on his scrawny body and a metal tumbler on his head. He grinned up at me and winked before snuggling deeper into the bag. I should have known. James would never let me leave alone. I walked into the bathroom and flicked off the light. Someone in a stall gave out a yell.
Hey, I'm in here.
Legion, I hissed and was quickly met with a cold, clammy hand wrapped around my wrist.
Thank you for lunch.
There was a shrill scream from the woman on the toilet before I was again in the boogie's domain.
We were banished to the shadows long ago. Once we were creatures of the light. We took indiscriminately then.
This was to be our prison.
They made a grave error in judgment.
Legion snickered. We walked for a few more steps before gentle light defined the boogies. They were tall and lanky with arms much too long. One smiled at me. I'm sure it was supposed to be reassuring. I was in an alley. I could hear the chaotic sounds of city traffic, the honking of cars, the din of many people talking or yelling, each in their own little world.
Go into the light. Take a left. Look for the sign of the dragon.
I wandered through the strange city for 10 minutes before I found a red dragon curling out from the side of the building. A neon sign blinked, tattoos in the window. It was the first English word I had come across. I wasn't good at telling the difference between Asian script, but I most certainly wasn't in America anymore. A small bell dinged as I entered the shop. Several sets of eyes examined me when I stepped through.
Moshi Moshi.
A middle-aged man pushed up his glasses as he steered his wheelchair through the shop. Japan! I must be in Japan! I felt my face flush red. I was in over my head. What was I thinking? I couldn't speak any languages besides English. Oh, I cursed the American school system silently to myself. I'm so sorry.
Oh, English. I speak some. Are you lost?
The man smiled at me as the others in the room all exchanged looks. They were scary looking, each covered in vibrant tattoos. It was time to pull up my socks and put on my big girl panties. It was much too late to turn back now. I was hoping to get a tattoo.
Oh.
He raised an eyebrow at me and wheeled closer.
Do you know what you want?
Yes. I pulled the bound paper from my bag. My elf wriggled farther down out of sight. Unrolling it carefully, I showed him the tattoos I had painstakingly drawn. It unraveled and hit the floor. The jaws in the room dropped.
You want all of this?
Yes. I have special ink, too, if that's all right.
That will take a long time and very costly.
How long and how much?
He
looked at the men behind him.
Are you sure you want this?
Yes, and they have to be exactly like what's on the paper. He studied me for a moment before taking the scroll and examining it closely. I had drawn protection seals, Vegvisir, some of the Nephilim runes Rory had tattooed on himself, and much, much more. I had begun my plan many months ago and added to it slowly. It started as something I wanted and became something I needed. If I was going to hunt down a god by myself, I'd need to cover all my bases. If my baby brother could do it, so could I. I would protect, no matter what it cost me. The man nodded his head and gestured to a room in the back. As I removed my shirt and settled into position on the chair, the man dipped his pinky into my rune ink and brought it to his lips. He rolled it around his mouth and looked at me with narrowed eyes.
Are you running from something?
No.
Hiding?
Not yet.
I haven't had anyone bring me magic ink in a long time, child. But you are missing an ingredient. May I?
He scooted back to an old apothecary cabinet and pulled open a small drawer. From it, he drew what looked like an opalescent scale the size of his palm. He ground it with a mortar and pestle before mixing it with my ink.
Would you like some tea before we begin?
I'll admit I was ridiculously nervous. I'd never gotten a tattoo before, and here I was, asking for a back piece, half sleeves, and some down my legs. I quickly agreed to the tea, hoping it would calm my nerves. The hot liquid filled my mouth and ran down my throat like silky fingers. Honey mingled with the amber herbs as the slightly floral taste enveloped me. Its warmth soothed me, and before the needle even touched my flesh, I was sound asleep. I awoke, stiff, sore, and scared. As I tried to clear the sleep from my eyes, I heard a soft clinking and an "oh." Finally focusing, I found my little elf sitting cross-legged on the floor, teacup in his hands. He smiled up at me and proudly displayed tattoos matching my own.
You're finally awake.
A voice spoke from behind me, and my elf waved. The wheelchair-bound man came into the room and smiled.
Little Ratto wished to match you.
He seemed so calm for a man entertaining a humanoid version of a Sphinx cat.
I made a few adjustments to your tattoos.
I looked down at my arms. They were completely covered in lightly bleeding tattoos. The gray ink faded into a white the farther down my arm it went. I was dressed in only a towel. Gentle scrolling ink decorated my collarbone.
Perhaps you should check the mirror.
He gestured to a small door behind me. Careful not to lose my towel, I moved to the small bathroom and shut the door. 2 floor-length mirrors hung on the wall. My runes, symbols, and shapes swirled around my body like ink armor. The Vegvisir laid neatly between my shoulder blades, the rest blooming outward from it. Reaching up from it, like twin tendrils of smoke, Kana decorated the back of my neck and just behind my ears. From my elbows to my wrists, a pattern of delicate lace-like scales. It was beautiful. How long had I been asleep? I carefully pulled my clothes on and left the bathroom. How long was I out?
Oh, a day or so.
28 hours, my lady, my elf chimed in. I could only stare at the two in silence. There was no reason to fret over it now. How much? I only have American currency, I'm sorry. Will you accept that? He held out his hand and grasped mine, wizened eyes sparkling.
I tattoo old friends for free, Moira.
I yanked my hand away in surprise and took a step back. Who are you? I think you have me mistaken for someone else. He threw his head back and laughed.
You are never truly alone, dear one.
He glided backwards and gestured towards the door. I opened my bag and my elf jumped in, casting worried glances my way. The strange man's chuckle followed me as I stalked out of the shop and back towards the alley. I turned and shot the storefront a parting look when my eyes fell on the small scarecrow in the window. I could swear it winked at me. Legion? The alleyway was dark, but something wasn't right.
Who are you?
A voice like dark chocolate asked as a tall man exited the shadowy corner. I backed away and the elf began hissing. The rune on my chest grew hot. Who's asking?
Who are you? Do not make me ask again.
The stranger was furious. I could see his hands clutched tightly into fists. He took another step towards me and a ray of light splashed across his face. Charlie? I gasped. He took another step and the light danced across, the long white hair cascading down his back. He cocked his head at me and glared some more. Hands grasped at me and yanked me into the dark safety before the angry man could respond or follow.
Another watcher!
We must be careful, Moira. We can't let them in the underneath.
Legion, do you know who that was?
Watcher!
They all cried in unison. I'd hurt my head when they spoke at once. My lady, are you well? I could feel tiny hands gently touching my arm. I'm okay. What's your name? I am your general, my queen. Yes, but is your name really Ratto? If my lady wishes it. Legion snickered. I am called Frick. I could hear the pout in his small voice.
We are here.
Good luck, Moira.
We will wait for you in the night.
With that, Frick and I were ejected into a dark room lit only by candles and a warm fire. On the mantel above the flickering flame was a golden sand hourglass. Sparkling sand trickled slowly in a strange, whirling pattern, as if not bound by gravity. A rocking chair creaked, and an old man with wild, white hair and a long beard turned slowly and gazed at me with crazed eyes. He pulled himself to his feet, leaning on a large scythe gripped firmly in his hand.
Mother of Ruin, have you brought me your child?
Spittle flew from his mouth and clung to his wiry beard. No, Cronus, I have brought you your end.